Welcome to the Steps in Purpose podcast with Edie Ann. This podcast explores emotional awareness, faith, and purposeful living through short, reflective conversations designed to help you notice where you are and take your next step with clarity. Thanks for being here. What if May, like the month of May, isn't asking you to start over like most months do, but it's simply inviting you to take one honest next step, like springing forward. There's something about May that feels different, and I really want to just focus on that today. Can we do that? The air softens, right? The days stretch out a little bit longer. We have more daylight. The ground wakes up in its own little way, right? Things that looked lifeless a few weeks ago start to show these tiny signs of green and a little bit of color. And somehow that alone can make your heart breathe a little bit deeper. I think May has this gentle way of reminding us that growth doesn't always come with this big announcement, right? Sometimes growth looks like one small shift in your thinking. Sometimes it looks like getting up and trying again. Sometimes it looks like forgiving yourself. Maybe it looks like forgiving yourself for the version of you who was doing the best that you could with the tools that you had at the time. And sometimes growth looks like realizing you're still here. You're still doing the thing, right? You're still getting up every morning. And that matters. That matters a whole lot. I was thinking about this because we put so much pressure on ourselves when a new month begins, right? We've got quotas, I know with my business, our numbers start over again at 0, and it's this climb that starts every single month. And we think we need a whole new plan, a whole new routine, a whole new version of ourselves. And before we even begin, we're already tired. Like, May just walked in the door and we're already handing her a clipboard and a job description, right? But what if May doesn't need to be that heavy? What if this month could simply begin with one question? What is my next right step? That question feels simple, but it can meet us in so many different places. For one person, the next right step might be rest, like real rest. The kind of rest where you allow your body and your mind to stop proving something for a minute. Just rest. For someone else, the right next step might be courage. Maybe it's making the call. Starting that conversation and saying yes to something that's been sitting on your heart, or finally admitting that something needs to change. And for someone else, the next right step might be Forgiveness. Maybe that forgiveness is towards another person. Maybe it's towards yourself. And honestly, forgiving ourselves can be the harder one because we tend to hold ourselves hostage with things God already gave us grace for. Why do we do that? That one will sit you down if you let it. Yeah. Sometimes the next right step is letting go of something you've been carrying for too long. Maybe it's a belief. Maybe it's a guilt. Maybe it's the need to explain yourself to people who have already decided what they want to believe anyway, right? Maybe it's an old identity that fit you for a season, but feels a little too small now. And sometimes the next right step is choosing joy again. Did you hear that word? Choosing joy. I always say happiness is temporary, but joy happens regardless of circumstance. Happiness can come and go based on what the day brings. But joy is deeper. It bubbles up. Joy has roots. Joy can sit with you even when life feels uncertain, even when the answers are slow to come, even when your circumstances still have those sharp edges, right? That's why I love the idea of stepping into May with gentleness instead of pressure. Because so many of us are trying to move forward while we're still carrying pieces of what hurt us, what shaped us, what stretched us, or what wore us down, right? We want to feel better, but we may still be standing in our old thoughts. We want peace, but our minds keep rehearsing the same stories over and over again. We want clarity, but we're trying to find it with emotionally exhausted minds. Right? This is exactly why I created Steps in Purpose and the Emotion Gauge. It came from my life, from my own life. It came from those places where I felt stuck, frustrated, disconnected, hopeful, empowered, and eventually more aligned with who God created me to be. Right? I went through all of those places, being stuck and frustrated, disengaged but hopeful, and aligned, right? I needed language for what was happening inside me. I didn't understand how to explain it to people, right? I needed a way to recognize where I was emotionally without shaming myself for being there. Because I really, really believe that awareness is so powerful. And when you can name where you are, you can begin to understand what your next step might be. I also feel that when you can name it, it separates it from who you are. You can separate it from your identity because it ends up with its own identity when you name it. Right? So when you name it, you begin to understand what your next step might be. And that step doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to impress anybody. It doesn't have to make sense to people watching from the outside. It only has to make sense to you. And it just has to be honest. Right? Maybe today your next step is getting quiet long enough to hear yourself think. Maybe it's opening your Bible. Maybe it's taking a walk. Yesterday I went for a ride on side-by-side. Maybe it's writing down what you've been feeling instead of carrying it around like a backpack full of bricks. Maybe it's reaching out to someone. Maybe it's admitting you've been in survival mode and you're ready to breathe again. There is no shame in beginning from where you are. I think that's where so many people get hung up, right? They think they have to be further along before they can take a meaningful step. And sometimes they think they're in a different place than they actually are. They think they have to feel strong before they can actually move forward. They think they have to understand the whole path before they can start walking. But sometimes purpose meets us in the smallest act of obedience. I want to repeat that because I know when I've said it in the past, it didn't click right away. But sometimes purpose meets us in the smallest act of obedience. Sometimes God gives us just enough light for the step we're on, and then the next one becomes clearer after we move. That takes trust. And listen, I know trust sounds pretty when we say it out loud, but living it can feel like trying to, assemble furniture with instructions that are written by a raccoon, right? You're staring at the pieces thinking, Lord, I believe you, but I also want, where's the little screw and what do I do with these 3 extra parts? Okay? That's real life. Faith doesn't mean we always feel certain. Faith means we keep turning our face towards God while we take the next step He's placed in front of us, right? So as we walk into May, I want to invite you to take the pressure off the whole month and bring your attention back to today. Just today. What is today asking from you? What is your heart quietly needing? What thought keeps repeating that may be ready to be challenged? What would feel like peace instead of performance? And what is one next right step you can take from where you are right now? That may be the most powerful place to begin. If you've already read my foundation book, Steps in Purpose, The 8 Levels of the Emotion Gauge, I hope this is a beautiful time to pull it back out and revisit the level that speaks to where you are right now. Because sometimes we read something once and then life brings us back to it with different eyes. And if you've read the book, then you know that we fluctuate within those levels often, right? And if you've been meaning to grab a copy, this book is the foundation of the emotion gauge that I refer to often. It walks through all 8 levels and it gives you language for the emotional places we move through in life, from feeling disengaged or stuck in survival all the way into hope, empowerment, alignment, and joy. You can find the link to get your copy in the show notes, okay, in our episode notes. But as we step into May, my prayer is that you give yourself grace for where you are right now, okay? Courage for what's next, and enough quiet space to hear the whisper of your next right step. You don't have to figure out the whole month today. Just take the next step. Why? Because your next step really does matter. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep stepping in purpose.